That snowy Christmas Eve in Minnesota felt different than all the others. I stood outside my aunt's house, snow crunching under my old boots as I looked at the warm lights inside. My phone buzzed with a text from Grandpa Joe. "Tommy, hurry inside. I have exciting news to share with everyone." Grandpa Joe was rich from his car dealership business in Detroit. He rarely visited our small town, but when he did, it meant something big was happening. I rushed to the front door, shaking snow off my jacket. The smell of turkey and apple pie filled the house. Christmas music played softly while my whole family sat around the big wooden table. Grandpa Joe stood up when he saw me, his face bright with excitement. He gave me a huge hug that smelled like his favorite aftershave. "Tommy," he said loudly, "tell me the truth. How do you like living in that beautiful house I bought for your family?" His eyes sparkled like he had given me the best present in the world. I felt confused and looked around the room. "What house, Grandpa?" We still live in the same small apartment we've always lived in. The room went completely quiet. Everyone stopped eating. Grandpa's smile disappeared fast. He looked at my mom, Jennifer, and my stepdad, Mark, sitting across from me. Mom's face turned white as snow. Mark started shaking and almost dropped his fork. My little sister, Amy, looked scared because she didn't understand what was happening. Nobody said anything for what felt like forever. "The same apartment?" Grandpa repeated, his voice getting cold and angry. "Tommy, what are you talking about? I sent money for a big house with a yard." I looked at Mom, hoping she would explain everything, but she just stared at her plate. Mark tried to smile, but his hands were shaking. "Dad, maybe Tommy is just confused about something," Mom said quickly, but her voice sounded scared. Grandpa didn't look at her. He kept looking at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. I knew something terrible was about to happen. "Hi, my name is Tommy Chun. The story I'm going to tell you is about the years when my own family lied to me. If you've ever felt like people you trust were keeping secrets from you, then maybe you'll understand how I felt. But even if you haven't, I want you to hear this story. It's about a kid who found out his family wasn't who he thought they were, and how he learned to be strong when everything fell apart. I grew up in a tiny apartment in Lakewood, Minnesota, where the winters were long and cold. My real dad left when I was a baby, so I never knew him. All I had were a few old pictures Mom kept in a shoebox. When I was 4, Mom married Mark, who seemed nice at first. They had Amy together when I was 6. Amy became Mom's whole world. She got new clothes, new toys, and all of Mom's attention. I got hand-me-downs from garage sales and had to share everything. Mark treated Amy like a princess, but acted like I was just someone who lived in their house. When I was 7, I remember Amy getting a brand new bicycle for her birthday, the kind with sparkly streamers and a bell. I got a broken toy truck from the dollar store that Mark said was perfectly fine for me. When I brought home good grades from school, Mark would just say, "Okay," and keep watching TV. But when Amy learned to tie her shoes, they threw a big party like she had climbed a mountain. I wasn't a mean kid. I just wanted someone to notice when I did something good or when I felt sad. But as time went on, I realized that Mom and Mark only care about Amy. Mark would say things like, "Tommy, why can't you be more helpful like Amy?" Or, "You should be thankful we give you a place to sleep." Those words hurt worse than if he had hit me. I started wondering if there was something wrong with me that made me hard to love. We didn't have much money, but we weren't super poor either. Mark worked at a factory making car parts, while Mom worked part-time at a grocery store. But somehow Amy always got new things while I wore clothes that were too small or had holes in them. My bedroom was really the storage closet with a small bed and boxes stacked everywhere. Amy had a pretty room with pink walls and stuffed animals everywhere. When I asked why I couldn't have a real bedroom, Mark snapped, "Stop complaining, Tommy. You get what you get." I learned to hide my feelings and pretend everything was fine. Even though I was sad inside, I smiled and acted like nothing bothered me. I told myself that someday I would grow up and move away to a place where someone would care about me. The only person who ever made me feel special was Grandpa Joe. He was Mom's dad and lived far away in Detroit, where he owned 3 car dealerships. He was super successful and always busy, but when he called me on the phone, He made me feel important. When I turned 16, I was excited about maybe getting my driver's license like other kids my age. But when I asked Mark about driving lessons or getting a car, he laughed. "Tommy, we don't have money for that," he said. "Amy will need a car in a few years, and she's more responsible than you are." Amy was only 10 years old. I felt so angry and sad, but I didn't argue. That night, I cried in my closet bedroom and promised myself I would find a way to leave this house as soon as I could. I got a job at McDonald's when I turned 16, working after school and on weekends. The work was hard, standing for hours, dealing with rude customers, and coming home smelling like French fries. But I didn't complain because every dollar I earned was mine. I saved most of my money in a secret bank account, dreaming about the day I could move out. Meanwhile, Amy got everything she wanted without working for it. She had the newest phone, designer clothes, and went to summer camps that cost hundreds of dollars. When I graduated high school, I wanted to go to college so badly. I had good grades and dreams of becoming a teacher. But when I asked Mom and Mark about college, they said we couldn't afford it. Amy is younger and has more potential. Mark said like it was obvious. We need to save money for her future. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Amy, who spent all day playing video games and complaining about chores, was more important than my education. I realized I was completely alone in this family. I moved into a tiny studio apartment across town that smelled like old carpet and had a leaky sink. But it was mine. I didn't have to listen to Mark's mean comments or watch Amy get treated like a queen while I was ignored. I worked 2 jobs, McDonald's during the day and cleaning offices at night. I was always tired, but I was free. Sometimes Mom would see me at the grocery store where she worked and act surprised, like she forgot I existed. "Tommy, you look so thin," she'd say, but never offer to help. Those years were lonely. I didn't have many friends because I worked so much. Most weekends, I stayed in my apartment eating cheap ramen noodles and watching old movies on my laptop. But I had one bright spot in my life, Grandpa Joe. He lived in Detroit running his car dealerships and making lots of money. Even though he was busy, he called me every few weeks. Those phone calls kept me going. He would ask about my jobs and always said, "Tommy, you're a fighter. Don't let anyone tell you different." I never told Grandpa Joe how Mom and Mark treated me. I didn't want him to worry, and part of me was embarrassed that my own family didn't love me. Grandpa was the only one who ever talked about my real dad. He said my dad was a good man who loved books and wanted to travel the world. "If your dad could see you now, he'd be so proud," Grandpa would say, and his voice would get sad. I wished I could have met my real dad just once to know what it felt like to have a parent who cared. As years passed, I got used to being alone. I learned to fix things in my apartment, cook simple meals, and take care of myself. The sadness was still there, but I was stronger now. I didn't know that while I was working hard to build my own life, Mom and Mark were hiding a huge secret from me, a secret that would change everything I thought I knew about my family. I had no idea that Grandpa Joe had been sending the money meant for me. When I was 19, I was still living in my small apartment and working my 2 jobs. My days were the same. Wake up tired, work all day, come home to an empty apartment, and fall asleep watching TV. I didn't have much, but I had learned to be independent. One cold December day while I was taking a break at McDonald's, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Come to dinner Sunday. New address, 847 Pine Valley Road. Family gathering." I read it 3 times, confused. New address? They had never mentioned moving. I almost didn't go. Part of me wanted to ignore the text and pretend I never got it, but something made me curious. Maybe this was a chance to see if things had changed between us. Maybe they wanted to include me in their family again. I decided to go, and I wanted to bring a gift to show I was trying to be nice. I bought a small gift card to a restaurant and wrapped it carefully. The address Mom gave me was in Willowbrook, a fancy neighborhood I had never been to before. As I drove through the neighborhood, I couldn't believe my eyes. Huge houses with perfectly cut grass, 3-car garages, and decorations that must have cost hundreds of dollars. Everything looked like it came from a magazine about rich people's homes. I found a house with the right address, a beautiful 2-story house with stone walls, big windows, and a front porch with white columns. There were expensive cars in the driveway. I sat in my old beat-up Honda, feeling like I didn't belong there. Mom answered the door, wearing a fancy dress I had never seen before. Her hair was done up nice, and she had on expensive jewelry. "Oh, Tommy, you made it," she said, but she didn't sound very happy to see me. I walked inside, and my mouth fell open. The living room had shiny hardwood floors, leather furniture that looked brand new, and a huge TV mounted on the wall. Family photos covered a whole table. Pictures of Mom, Mark, and Amy at fancy restaurants and vacation spots. No pictures of me anywhere. Mark was in the kitchen wearing a polo shirt and khaki pants, looking more relaxed than I had ever seen him. When he saw me, he barely looked up from his phone. "Hey," he said, like I was some random neighbor who had stopped by. I handed Mom the gift card and said, "Congratulations on the new house." She took it without opening it and set it on the counter like it didn't matter. I looked around at all the expensive things, wondering how they could suddenly afford all this. The dinner table was set with fancy plates and real cloth napkins. Amy, now 13, was wearing designer clothes and had the newest iPhone sitting next to her plate. A few of their new neighbors were there, talking about golf clubs and vacation homes. They chatted about property taxes, home renovations, and how great their new neighborhood was. I sat quietly in the corner, eating and listening. Nobody asked where I had been or what I was doing with my life. I felt invisible, like I was watching someone else's family through a window. "We searched for months to find the perfect house," Mom told one of the neighbors, sounding very proud. "Luckily, we found this one right before house prices went crazy high." Mark nodded and smiled, acting like he was some kind of real estate genius. I sat there trying to be happy for them. I really wanted to congratulate them for finding something that made them happy. I had no idea that I was congratulating them for stealing something that belonged to me. I didn't know they were living in a house that Grandpa Joe had bought for me. That night, when I got back to my apartment, I thought about calling Grandpa Joe to tell him about Mom's new house. But I decided not to bother him since he was getting older and had his business to run. I went to bed on my lumpy mattress, staring at the water stain on my ceiling. I fell asleep completely unaware that a huge lie was about to explode and change my life forever. I had no idea that for years, Grandpa Joe had been sending money to help me, but Mom and Mark had been keeping it all. After that dinner, things went back to normal, or at least what I thought was normal. Nobody called me or texted me for weeks. Then something strange started happening. For every holiday and birthday, I got invited to their house. Not warm, carrying invitations, but short text messages. "Dinner at 6. Don't be late." Or "Amy's birthday party Sunday. Bring a gift." I went because I still hoped things might get better between us, even though I felt out of place in their fancy house every time. Each time I visited, I brought small gifts that I bought with my McDonald's money. But my gifts always got put aside, without anyone saying thank you. The weirdest thing was they started asking me to be in family photos. The first time was at Christmas. Mom called me over and said, "Tommy, stand next to Amy. We're taking a Christmas picture." I was surprised but stepped into the photo. Mark stood in the middle with his arm around Amy. I stood at the edge, trying to smile. When the camera flashed, I felt like I was pretending to be part of a family I didn't really belong to. They kept taking pictures with me in them. Sometimes with the whole family. Sometimes just with Mom or Mark. Once Mom even put her arm around my shoulder and smiled big for camera. I didn't understand what was happening. Before, they acted like I didn't exist. Now, they wanted me in all their family photos. I asked Mom one time, "Why are we taking so many pictures lately?" She laughed and said, "We just want to remember good times together. Your family too, right?" But something about it felt fake, like we were actors in a play. When I turned 21, I was still working my 2 jobs and living in the same tiny apartment. My refrigerator was almost empty and my couch had springs poking through, but I was proud that I was taking care of myself. One freezing December day, while I was mopping floors at the office building, my phone rang. It was Grandpa Joe, and he sounded more excited than I had heard him in years. "Tommy, I'm coming to visit. I'll be at your new house tomorrow evening. I can't wait to see how you like it." I stopped mopping and felt confused. My new house? Grandpa, I still live in the same apartment I've had for 2 years. There was silence on the phone. Then Grandpa said, "What apartment?" "Tommy, I'm talking about the house at 847 Pine Valley Road. The house I bought for you." My heart started pounding so hard I could hear in my ears. That was Mom's address. That was the fancy house where they lived. "Grandpa, that's where Mom and Mark live," I said quietly. "I don't live there." The phone went quiet again. "I'm coming over right now," Grandpa said, and his voice sounded different, cold and angry. "Meet me at that house." I dropped the mop and ran to my car, my hand shaking as I drove to Pine Valley Road. When I got there, Grandpa's shiny black car was already in the driveway. I could see him through the front window, standing in the living room and talking to Mom and Mark. Even from outside, I could tell he was upset. I walked the front door and knocked, my heart beating so fast I thought it might explode. Mark opened the door, and his face was white as paper. "Tommy, why are you here?" he asked, but his voice was shaky. I walked inside and saw Grandpa Joe standing by the fireplace. He looked tall and angry, like a storm cloud. When he saw me, he opened his arms and hugged me tight. "Tommy," he said, and his voice was shaking, "I need you to tell me the truth. Do you live in this house?" I looked around at Mom and Mark, who both looked scared. "No, Grandpa. I live in a small apartment across town. I work at McDonald's to pay rent." The room became so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Mom started to say something, but Grandpa held up his hand to stop her. "Jennifer," he said to Mom, using his angry voice, 2 years ago, I sent you $300,000 to buy a house for Tommy. This house. I wanted to give my grandson a good start in life. So why is he living in some apartment while you and Mark are living in his house?" Mom's face turned red, and she started crying. Mark just stared at the floor like he was hoping it would swallow him up. I felt like I was in a dream. $300,000. For me, to buy a house. I looked at the fancy furniture, the big TV, the expensive decorations. All of this was supposed to be mine. "Mom," I said, but my voice came out like a whisper. "Is that true?" She wiped her eyes and said, "Tommy, we thought it would be better if we all share the house as a family. You're so independent, and Amy needed a stable home environment." Grandpa made it sound like an angry bear. "Shared? Shared? Tommy doesn't even live here." Mark finally looked up and said, "We thought Tommy would be happier on his own. He never seemed to want to be around us anyway." His voice was weak and shaky. Grandpa stepped toward Mark, and I had never seen my grandpa so angry. "You're telling me that you kept the money I sent for Tommy? You let him work at McDonald's and live in some tiny apartment while you live in luxury? And you sent me all these fake family photos to make me think he was happy here." Grandpa pointed at the pictures on the table. "You lied to me?" Mom was crying harder now. "Dad, please understand. Tommy isn't my real son. Amy is our future. Tommy doesn't need a big house like this." Grandpa's face got so red, I thought he might have a heart attack. "Doesn't need? Tommy is your son. You married his mother and promised to take care of him. I trusted you to do right by him." He turned to me, and his eyes were sad and angry at the same time. "Tommy, go pack your things. You're coming to Detroit with me. This house belongs to you, and I'm going to make sure you get it back." I looked at Mom and Mark one more time. All those years of feeling unloved, of working so hard just to survive, of wondering why I wasn't good enough. Now I knew the truth. They had stolen my future and lied about it. "I can't believe you did this," I said, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to speak up to them. "You let me struggle and work 2 jobs while you were living in my house with my money. You made me feel like I didn't deserve anything, but you were the one stealing from me." Mark tried to say something, but I walked away. The cold night air hit my face as Grandpa and I walked his car. I felt like I was leaving behind a life that was never really mine anyway. Grandpa's car was warm and smelled like leather and his cologne. "Tommy," he said as we drove away from the house, "I'm so sorry. I should have checked on you myself instead of trusting them. I've been sending money for years to make sure you had everything you needed, but they kept it all." I stared out the window at the streetlights. "It's not your fault, Grandpa. I just wish I had known." We drove to a fancy hotel downtown, where Grandpa was staying. The lobby had marble floors and crystal chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds. I had never been anywhere so nice in my whole life. Grandpa got me my own room with a huge bed and a bathroom bigger than my entire apartment. "Tomorrow we're going to Detroit," he said. "You can stay with me as long as you want. We'll figure out how to get your house back, and I'll help you go to college like you always wanted. You deserve so much more than what they gave you." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the years I felt unloved and unwanted, all the times I wondered what was wrong with me. Now I knew there was nothing wrong with me. My family had just been lying and stealing from me. I felt angry and sad and relieved all at the same time. When morning came, Grandpa took me shopping for new clothes, and we had breakfast at an expensive restaurant. "This is how you should have been living," he said. "I'm going to make up for lost time." The airplane ride to Detroit was my first time flying. I pressed my face against a small window and watched the world get smaller below us. Grandpa sat next to me reading a business magazine, but sometimes he would point out cities and landmarks. Detroit looked huge from the air, so many buildings and roads stretching out like a giant puzzle. When we landed, a man in a suit was waiting for us with a sign that had my name on it. I felt like I was in a movie about rich people. Grandpa's house in Detroit was like a castle. It had tall iron gates, a long driveway, and was bigger than any house I had ever seen. The inside had marble floors, fancy paintings on the walls, and rooms I didn't even know what they were for. My bedroom was on the second floor and had its own bathroom and a balcony overlooking a garden. The bed was so big and soft, I felt like I was floating on a cloud. For the first time in my life, I had a room that was truly mine. Grandpa owned 3 car dealerships in different parts of the city. His main office was in a tall glass building downtown. He introduced me to his employees as my grandson Tommy, and everyone treated me with respect. "Would you like to learn about the car business?" Grandpa asked. "You could start part-time and see if you like it. Or, if you want to go to college first, that's fine too." I had never had so many choices in my life. At Mom and Mark's house, I never got to choose anything. Now, Grandpa was asking what I wanted to do with my future. I decided to start working at one of the dealerships while taking college classes at night. The work was interesting, talking to customers, learning about different cars, and helping people find what they needed. My co-workers were friendly and taught me new things every day. After years of cleaning toilets and flipping burgers, it felt amazing to have a job where people respected me. Grandpa paid me a good salary, and for the first time in my life, I had money in my bank account and didn't worry about paying rent. Detroit was exciting and scary at the same time. The city was huge with tall buildings, busy streets, and more people than I had ever seen. There were museums, sports stadiums, and restaurants that served food from countries I had never heard of. Grandpa took me to Tigers baseball games and taught me about business over dinner at fancy steakhouses. Sometimes I felt guilty for enjoying my new life so much when I had been so unhappy before. But Grandpa always said, "Tommy, you deserve good things. Don't feel bad for being happy." Even though my new life was wonderful, I still felt sad sometimes about my past. Some nights I would dream about my old apartment or remember how lonely I used to feel. I kept thinking about Mom, Mark, and Amy living in the house that was supposed to be mine. I wondered if they felt bad about what they had done or if they even missed me. Grandpa noticed when I got quiet and sad. "It takes time to heal from being hurt," he told me. "But you're stronger than you know, and you have a bright future ahead of you." One evening while we were eating dinner, Grandpa handed me an envelope with my name on it. Inside was a letter from Mom. My hand shook as I read it. She wrote that she was sorry for everything that happened. She said Mark had lost his job, and they were having money problems. Amy was struggling in school and having trouble making friends in their new neighborhood. Mom asked if I could forgive them and maybe help them with some money. She signed it, "Love, Mom," like nothing had ever happened between us. I showed the letter to Grandpa, and his face got dark and angry just like it had that night at their house. "The nerve of that woman," he said. "After stealing from you for years, now she wants your help when things get tough." I read the letter again, trying to feel something for the people who had raised me, but all I felt was empty. They had never loved me or treated me like family. Now that they were in trouble, suddenly they wanted me back. "I don't want to help them," I told Grandpa. "They made their choice when they took what was mine." Grandpa nodded and said he was proud of me for standing up for myself. "You don't owe them anything, Tommy. They had their chance to be a real family to you, and they chose money instead." We threw the letter away and didn't talk about it anymore. I focused on my work at the dealership and my college classes. I was studying business management and getting good grades. For the first time in my life, I had goals and dreams that felt possible. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building a real future. A few months later, I got another letter from Mom. This time she wrote that they had lost a house and had to move back to a small apartment. Mark couldn't find steady work, and Amy was angry all the time. Mom begged me to call her and said the family needed me. She wrote that I was her only hope and that blood was thicker than water. Reading those words made me laugh, but not in a happy way. When I needed family, they weren't there. When they needed money, suddenly I was family again. I wrote back to Mom, but my letter was short and simple. I told her that I had learned to take care of myself without their help, and now they could learn to do the same. I said I forgave them for what they did, but I didn't want them in my life anymore. I signed it Tommy, not Love Tommy or your son Tommy, just Tommy. After I mailed the letter, I felt lighter, like I had finally closed a door that had been hurting me for years. I was free to be happy without worrying about their problems. Life in Detroit kept getting better. I made friends at work and at college, real friends who liked me for who I was. I started dating a nice girl named Sarah who worked at the bank downtown. She thought I was funny and smart, and she never made me feel like I had to earn her attention. Grandpa loved seeing me happy and healthy. "You're becoming the man I always knew you could be," he told me. Sometimes I thought about my real dad and wondered if he would have been proud of how I turned out. At Christmas that year, Grandpa and I decorated a huge tree in his living room. We hung ornaments and lights while Christmas music played. It was the first Christmas I had ever felt truly happy and loved. We took lots of pictures together, but these were real family photos, not the fake ones Mom had sent to trick Grandpa. Sarah came over for Christmas dinner, and we laughed and talked for hours. I realized this was what a real family felt like. People who cared about each other and wanted each other to be happy. One snowy day in January, I was working at the dealership when a familiar car pulled into the parking lot. My heart stopped when I saw Amy get out the passenger side. She looked different, older, sadder, and skinnier than I remembered. She walked into the showroom and looked around until she saw me. "Tommy," she said, and her voice was small and scared. I hadn't seen her in over a year, and I felt a mix of emotions I wasn't ready for. She looked like she had been crying. Amy told me that things at home were really bad. Mom and Mark fought all the time about money. They had moved to a tiny apartment in a dangerous neighborhood because it was all they could afford. Mark was working at a gas station, but barely made enough money for food. Mom was cleaning houses, but her back hurt, and she couldn't work many hours. Amy said she had to get a job at a fast food restaurant to help pay bills, and she hated it. She said she missed a nice house and wished things could go back to how they used to be. "Can you help us?" Amy asked, and tears started running down her face. "I know Mom and Mark did bad things to you, but I'm your sister. I didn't know about the money or the house. I was just a kid." I looked at Amy and saw a scared teenager who was paying for her parents' mistakes. Part of me felt sorry for her, but another part remembered all the years she got everything while I got nothing. Amy, I said gently, you're not my responsibility. Mom and Mark chose to steal from me. Now they have to deal with the consequences. Amy's face crumpled, and she started crying harder. But we're family, she said. Doesn't that mean anything? I thought about that word, family. For most of my life, I had been desperate to feel like part of their family. But they had never treated me like family when I needed them. Real family doesn't steal from each other. I told Amy, real family doesn't lie and let people suffer while they live in luxury. I learned to take care of myself, and now you need to learn too. Amy left without saying goodbye. That night, I told Grandpa about Amy's visit. He listened carefully and then said, "You did the right thing, Tommy. Helping them now would just teach them that they can treat people badly and still get what they want." I nodded, but I still felt a little sad about turning Amy away. She was just a kid caught in the middle of her parents' lies. But I knew that if I helped them now, they would just ask for more money later. I had to protect myself and the new life I was building. Spring came to Detroit with warm sunshine and green trees, and I finished my first year of college with good grades and got promoted to assistant manager at the dealership. Grandpa was so proud that he threw a party to celebrate. Sarah and I were getting more serious, and she even started talking about moving in together. My life felt full and happy in a way I had never experienced before. The pain from my past was still there sometimes, but it was getting smaller and smaller. One day while I was organizing files in Grandpa's home office, I found an old photo album I had never seen before. Inside were pictures of my real dad when he was young. He looked just like me, same eyes, same smile. There were photos of him and Mom when they were happy together before I was born. Grandpa found me looking at the pictures and sat down next to me. "Your father was a good man, Tommy," he said. "He would have been so proud of the person you've become." I felt sad that I never got to know him, but happy to finally see his face. That summer, Grandpa took me on a business trip to California. We flew first class and stayed in fancy hotels near the beach. I had never seen the ocean before, and I spent hours walking on the sand and watching the waves. We visited car dealerships that Grandpa was thinking about buying, and he asked my opinions about the business decisions. "You have good instincts," he told me. "Maybe someday you'll run your own dealership." The idea excited me, having my own business and being successful like Grandpa. When we got back to Detroit, there was a stack of letters waiting for me. 3 were from Mom, 2 from Mark, and 1 from Amy. I didn't want to read them, but Grandpa said it might give me closure to know what they had to say. The letters were all the same, begging for money, saying they were sorry, and promising they would change if I helped them just this one time. Amy's letter was the hardest to read because she said she was dropping out of high school to work full-time, but I knew that helping them wouldn't really help anyone. It would just make them dependent on me. I wrote one final letter back to all of them. I told them I hoped they would figure out how to build a good life for themselves, but I wasn't going to be part of it. I said that what they did to me was wrong, and even though I forgave them, I couldn't forget. I wished them well, but asked them never to contact me again. After I mailed that letter, I felt like I had finally closed that chapter of my life. I was ready to focus completely on my future, without looking back at the past that had hurt me so much. My second year of college was even better than the first. I was studying business and finance, and my professor said I had a natural talent for understanding how companies work. Sarah and I moved in together to a nice apartment downtown, and we started talking about getting married someday. Grandpa's health wasn't as good as it used to be, but he was still working every day and teaching me everything he knew about running a business. I felt grateful every day for the second chance he had given me. One cold December day, almost 3 years after that Christmas dinner, when the truth came out, I was working late at the dealership when someone knocked on the glass door. I looked up and saw Mark standing outside in the snow. He looked terrible, much older and thinner than I remembered. His clothes were old and dirty, and he was shivering from the cold. I thought about not opening the door, but something made me unlock it. He stepped inside and looked around at the shiny cars and nice offices. "You've done well for yourself," he said quietly. Mark told me that things had gotten much worse for their family. He had been fired from the gas station for missing too much work when he got sick. Mom was working 3 part-time jobs, but still couldn't make enough money to pay all their bills. Amy had dropped out of school and was working at a factory, but she was angry and bitter all the time. They were about to be evicted from their apartment and had nowhere to go. Mark said he knew he didn't deserve my help, but he was desperate and didn't know what else to do. I looked at Mark and felt a mix of emotions. Part of me felt sorry for him, but most of me remembered all the pain he had caused me. "Mark," I said, "when I was struggling and working 2 jobs just to survive, did you help me? When I was lonely and felt unloved, did you care? You had your chance to be a father to me, and instead you stole my future and gave it to Amy." Mark started crying, which I had never seen before. "I know I was wrong," he said. "I was selfish and stupid. But please, don't let Amy suffer for my mistakes." I thought about Amy, who was now 16 and working in a factory instead of going to school. She hadn't chosen to steal from me. That was her parents' decision. But helping her would mean helping Mark and Mom too, and I wasn't ready to do that. "Mark," I said, "I learned to take care of myself when nobody else would. Amy is young and strong. She can learn too, but I'm not going to fix the mess you created." Mark nodded sadly and walked back out into the snow. I watched him disappear into the darkness and felt sad, but I knew I had made the right choice. That spring, I graduated from college with honors. Grandpa was so proud that he cried during the ceremony. Sarah's whole family came to celebrate with us, and for the first time, I felt like I had a real family who loved and supported me. Grandpa offered to help me start my own car dealership, but I wanted to work with him for a few more years first to learn more about the business. We were a good team. He had the experience, and I had new ideas about technology and marketing. Sarah and I got engaged that summer. She said yes when I proposed on the beach in California, where we had vacationed the year before. Planning our wedding was exciting and stressful at the same time. Sarah asked if I wanted to invite Mom, Mark, and Amy to the wedding. I thought about it for a long time, but decided I didn't want them there. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and I didn't want to spend it worrying about people who had hurt me. Sarah understood and supported my decision. Our wedding was beautiful and perfect. Grandpa walked me down the aisle since my real dad couldn't be there. All of our friends from work and college came, along with Sarah's big, loving family. During the reception, Grandpa gave a speech about how proud he was of me and how much I'd grown since that terrible Christmas night 3 years ago. He said I was proof that good people can overcome bad situations if they work hard and don't give up. I felt so grateful for everything he had done for me. A few months after our wedding, I got a phone call from a lawyer in Minnesota. He told me that Mom had been in a car accident and was in the hospital. She was asking for me and wanted to see me before she had surgery. The lawyer said she might not survive, and this could be my last chance to talk to her. I felt confused and didn't know what to do. Part of me still cared about her because she had raised me, but another part of me remembered all the pain she had caused. Sarah and Grandpa both said the decision was mine to make. I decided to fly back to Minnesota to see Mom one last time. When I walked into her hospital room, she looked small and weak in the bed connected to machines. Her face lit up when she saw me, and she started crying. "Tommy," she whispered, "I'm so sorry for everything. I know I was a terrible mother to you. I let Mark convince me to keep the money, and I was wrong. I regretted it every day since then." She reached for my hand, and I let her hold it even though I was still angry with her. Mom told me she was proud of how successful I had become and that she knew Grandpa Joe was taking good care of me. She said she had divorced Mark because she finally realized how badly he had treated me. Amy was living with her and trying to get her high school diploma while working part-time. Mom asked if I could forgive her, not for her sake, but so I could be free of the anger and pain. I thought about it for a long time. "I forgive you, Mom," I said finally. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened or pretending we could be a family again." Mom's surgery went well, and she recovered over the next few weeks. Before I flew back to Detroit, I visited her one more time. She looked better and stronger. I told her I was glad she was okay, but I still didn't want her to be part of my life. She said she understood and that she just wanted me to be happy. "Take care of yourself, Tommy," she said. "I love you, even if I never showed it the right way." Those were the last words we ever spoke to each other. She died peacefully in her sleep 2 years later. Back in Detroit, life continued to get better. Sarah and I bought our own house. Not as big as Grandpa's mansion, but perfect for us. We got a dog named Max who loved to play fetch in our backyard. I opened my own car dealership with Grandpa's help, and it was successful from the very first day. We specialize in helping young people get their first cars with fair prices and honest service. It felt good to help other young people the way Grandpa had helped me. Grandpa's health started getting worse when he turned 78. The doctor said his heart was tired from working so hard his whole life. He couldn't come to the office every day anymore, but he still loved talking about business with me over dinner. One evening, while we were sitting on his back porch, he told me how proud he was that I had turned my pain into strength. "You could have been bitter and angry forever," he said, "but instead you chose to build something good. That takes real courage." When Grandpa died peacefully in his sleep at age 80, I was heartbroken, but also grateful for all the time we had together. He left me his house, his businesses, and most importantly, the knowledge that I was loved and valued. The funeral was huge. Hundreds of people came to say goodbye to a man who had helped so many others. In his will, he left a letter for me that said, "Tommy, you are everything I hoped you would become. Keep helping others the way I helped you, and you'll have a life full of meaning." Sarah and I decided to start a scholarship program for kids who were aging out of foster care or had difficult family situations. We called it the Second Chance Scholarship, and it helped pay for college, trade school, or other training programs. Every year, we met with the scholarship recipients and shared our story about how one person believing in you can change your whole life. Some of the kids reminded me of myself at their age, smart and determined, but lacking opportunities. 5 years after Grandpa died, Sarah and I had twin boys, Joseph and Daniel. We named Joseph after Grandpa Joe, and Daniel after my real father, whose middle name was Daniel. Holding my sons for the first time, I promised them they would always know they were loved and wanted. I would never let them wonder if they were good enough or deserving of happiness. They would grow up knowing their father believed in them and would always be there to support their dreams. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not having a relationship with Mom, Mark, and Amy. The honest answer is no. I learned that you can love people and still protect yourself from them. You can forgive people without letting them hurt you again. The family I built with Sarah, our boys, and the memory of Grandpa Joe is based on love, honesty, and respect. That's what real family looks like, and I'm grateful I finally found it. I heard through old friends that Amy eventually got her GED and went to community college. She became a nurse and seems to be doing well for herself. I'm happy she found her way, but I don't feel the need to reconnect with her. Mark moved to another state, and I never heard from him again. Sometimes I wonder they think about me, or if they learned anything from what happened. But mostly, I focus on the present and the future I'm building with the people who truly care about me. Our car dealerships became some of the most successful in Michigan. We treat our employees well, give fair deals to customers, and donate money to help kids in need. Every day when I walk into my office, I think about the scared young man I used to be, working at McDonald's and living in a tiny apartment. That person feels like someone from a dream now. I kept a picture of my old apartment on my desk to remind me how far I've come and to stay humble about my success. Joseph and Daniel are now 7 years old and full of energy and curiosity. They love coming to the dealership with me and pretending to sell cars to customers. Sometimes they ask why they don't have any uncles or aunts on my side of the family. I tell them the truth in simple words they can understand, that some people and families don't treat each other well, so sometimes it's better to love them from far away. They seem to understand and never push for more details. Last Christmas, as Sarah and I were decorating our tree while the boys played with their new toys, I thought about that terrible Christmas dinner 8 years ago when my whole world changed. At the time, it felt like the worst thing that could happen to me. But now I realize it was actually the best thing. If Grandpa hadn't discovered the truth, I might still be working dead-end jobs and wondering why I wasn't good enough for love. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead to the best changes. People often ask me what advice I would give to someone going through family problems like I did. I tell them that blood doesn't automatically make someone family, and being related to someone doesn't mean you have to accept bad treatment from them. Real family are the people who love you, support you, and want you to succeed. Sometimes you have to create your own family from friends, mentors, and people who see your worth when others don't. Don't be afraid to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they're related to you. The most important thing I learned is that you can't control how other people treat you, but you can control how you respond to that treatment. You can choose to be bitter and angry, or you can choose to build something better for yourself. I chose to build something better, and that choice changed everything. Today, when I tuck Joseph and Daniel into their beds in our warm, loving home, I know that the cycle of pain and neglect that started with my childhood ends with me. My boys will grow up knowing they are treasured. If you're watching this and you feel unloved or unwanted by your family, please know that your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. You have value and deserve happiness, even if the people closest to you can't see it. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who are supposed to love us the most. But that's their failure, not yours. Keep working toward your dreams. Find people who believe in you, and never give up on building the life you deserve. Your story isn't over yet.